So our experiment for this week is actually going to be two experiments. So we're going to be looking at two ways to explore actually being able to visualize convection currents in the Earth's mantle. So let's get started on those. Okay, so what you're going to need to do this is a large clear container filled up with room temperature or cool water. So I'm using this plastic bin that I usually store things in because it needs to be pretty big and clear, because whatever you have that fills up with water, you need to have a smaller container that's going to be shorter than the water level. So this will be underwater when I put it in. So large clear container that you can fill with water, and then a smaller container that will fit inside of it. So I just have a little glass yogurt jar here. And then you're going to need a piece of tin foil that will cover this. You need something that will poke a hole in the tin foil and you can mix your water with. Something to color and dye your water. I actually have legitimate paint here because I don't have any food coloring in my house, because I brought all my food coloring into school when we were doing experiments. But food coloring worked really well here. But if you don't have that, paint will work too. And then the last thing you need is some hot water. So once you've gathered all of that, we can get started. Okay, so what we're going to want to do is fill our small container up with our hot water and fill it up pretty much all the way to the top. And then once you have it filled, you're going to add a little bit of your coloring. So if it's food coloring, a couple of drops of food coloring. Paint, just a little, that's probably more than you need, just a little bit of paint. Then take whatever you have to stir and just stir it up so your water actually gets colored. So we'll be able to see where the hot water ends up going when we put it in. So once you have that all done, we are going to cover with tin foil, and then you can just poke a hole in this so that the water will be able to get out, but we'll have a small area to get out of, and you can't just blossom out completely. So then we're just going to take our container, careful because you just put hot water and it's hot, and put it into our container.
So we put hot water into our jar. So that hot water is less dense, so when it comes out of the jar, it rises up to the top. This is mimicking what happens in a convection current when heated water or heated magma will rise up to the top. So that's how we're showing the convection current here in this experiment.
Okay, for the second experiment, what you're going to need is a glass container of some sort, and this does need to be glass because we're going to be using a candle to add heat to it. You need something that you can prop your container up on so there's room underneath. I just have some tomato paste cans here. You're going to need a candle that can fit underneath your container. I just have a little candle here that's on some tin foil so it's not directly on my counter. You're going to need some ice water that is dyed a particular color. I have mine dyed blue, so I have some water with ice in here. You're going to need an eyedropper, which might be probably the hardest thing for you guys to find. You can try just pouring it in, but it won't work as well probably. And then something to dye the water with. I use my paint again. You can use food coloring. You need something to light your candle with. I have my kitchen torch. You could also use a match. And then water. And then finally, you should be doing this with adult supervision. We are working with candles and fire here. You need to have an adult around. So once you've gathered all of this and have an adult to help or supervise you, we'll get started. Okay, so we're going to start by putting our container up on our jars like this so it's elevated up, and then filling it up with our room temperature water. You could also do this at the sink and then walk it over here. I just happen to have mine in a pitcher. So fill it up, and then you're going to let it settle so it stops moving around. So we're going to let it settle down, stop moving, and then once it stopped moving, you're going to take your ice water. And because this is ice water, it's colder, right? If you remember back to what we did in school, cold water or cold air will sink down because it's more dense. So we are going to take this and put it at the bottom of our thing. So I'm going to use my dropper just to put this carefully on the bottom of this. So I'm not stirring this around because I want that blue to stay on the bottom of my container. So I'm just putting a second dropper full from. And now you should hopefully be able to see that it's all along the bottom of here. So the blue is just along the bottom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our candle, we are going to light it and put it underneath there. So we're adding a heat source.
In our experiment, the candle is the heat source, heating the water, making it rise up and spread out. Now, if you're thinking about this as a model for convection in the Earth's mantle, the candle would be the heat source coming from the core. So, like we learned about with seafloor spreading, there's places where magma can come up from the Earth. And so that's kind of similar to this, where you're getting one specific spot that is getting more heat and heating things up. So in our experiment, the water is rising and you can see it rise up and spread out. And eventually, if you watch long enough, it will move over to the sides and fall back down again. And that's that start of that current, where warmer things will rise up, and as they cool, they'll fall back down to the bottom because they're more dense. So you're getting these ongoing currents that are happening, both in our experiment here and just in our glass jar, but also what's happening, they think, in the Earth's mantle.